What if I told you that this little book right here holds one of the most important lessons I've ever learned about drawing? And no, it's not about perfect drawings. It's not about technique, not even about talent. What I discovered in here is something else, something I still use every single day in my studio. Let me show you. So this particular journal runs from June to August of 1996. I drew every single day. And the first thing that I wrote in my journal, becoming is more important than being. And I gotta say, for a drawing journal, that pretty much nails it. You're here to move, to explore, to become. The whole point is not to get perfect drawing, it's to stay in the motion. The point was simple, just draw what you see. But then I started drifting into imagination, storytelling. I just filled the pages in with little visual narratives that came out of nowhere. I wasn't worried if they made sense or not. It was just a flow of images, one after the other, and honestly, some of my favorite pages came from just letting my mind wander. At this stage, I was mostly drawing with simple ballpoint pens. No pencil, no erasers, straight to the page. Sink or swim, that kind of drawing forces you to commit to your lines. You don't get to second guess yourself. You make a decision and you live with it. After a while, you start getting really comfortable with your lines, or at least you learn to live with your mistakes. But yeah, some days were better than others. You'll see self-portraits, animals, horses, people, stuff lying around in my room, my mom. And then, of course, some days were where things just fell apart. That's part of it. You show up, even when the drawings aren't great. Family, neighbors, random people. You'll see a lot of drawings of my dog, Yo-Yo, and my mom. They were my most immediate and most accessible models. But once in a while, my neighbors showed up, my uncle, my cats. Pretty much anyone who happened to sit long enough became fair game. Eventually, I started copying from art history books. And then I leveled up. I started going to the Museo de Arte de Ponce. Still one of my favorite museums. I love the museum so much, I even rented a tiny room right behind it. Literally, just steps away. That way I could just walk across the street and spend hours drawing. I'd sit in front of paintings and sculptures and copy directly from the masters. Some of these drawings I started building up with watercolor washes in the background. The sepia tone gave everything a kind of a classical aged look, which fit in perfectly with the statues. It gave the images more tonality, more atmosphere. I was in my private little art school, and it cost me nothing but time, ink, and paper, and the museum entrance fees. Now, I think the staff at the museum were starting to get a little nervous when they saw me pulling out those watercolors. I guess at that point, they decided enough was enough, and they kicked me out. That was June 25th, 1996. I know because it's all documented right here in the journal. But I didn't let that stop. That same afternoon, I went out into the park and kept drawing. And I gotta say, Ponce is such a gorgeous city. Beautiful old lampposts, outdoor ornaments in the plazas, the trees, the light. The next day, right back to the museum again. This time, I kept a lower profile, less watercolor, and less attention. Apparently, you need a special permit to sketch in the galleries. I didn't know. So I got one, and then I doubled down. I wasn't going to stop. On July 1st, I was back in Aguadilla, my hometown, sketching the fisherman statue by Alberto Bali, a local sculptor. That moment sticks with me to this day, because as I sat there drawing, people started mocking me, laughing, as if drawing, simply sitting there drawing, was something weird, strange, even laughable. And you know what? As much as I love that place, I have to say, growing up there as an artist wasn't easy. People didn't always understand or appreciate art in general. You had to develop some thick skin if you wanted to be an artist in that kind of environment. Now, yes, my ex-girlfriend does show up again in some of these pages, and that's just part of the personal history embedded in these drawings. Of course, when I look back at these pages today, I can't exactly skip over the drawings of her face. But ultimately, what matters here is the drawing itself, the quality of the lines, the experimentation, and the growth. Besides, that's my personal life. That's none of your business. But let's move on. The first week of July, let's just say it was rough. You can see it in the drawings. My head wasn't completely in the game. And I know exactly why. There it is, in black and white. Because as most of you know, When you fall in love, everything else starts slipping to the side. Your focus, your discipline, your daily practice, all of it gets kind of blurry. But here's the thing, you can channel that too. That youthful, innocent love, that excitement, that confusion, you pour it into your lines. And when you do, sometimes magic happens. And sure, after that came some bad days again. A mini burnout, if you will. That was expected. There were days when I felt like I completely forgot how to draw, like I was lost. I had no idea what I was doing, or even why I was still doing it. But I kept showing up, I kept drawing, and actually some of those more gestural, loose, expressive pages have an intensity I couldn't have reached if everything had gone smoothly. In early August, I started playing with colored pencils, layering tones, having some fun, but as usual, after a few experiments, I hit another patch of bad drawing days. That's how it goes. And every time I hit a wall, the solution was always the same. Go back to basics, strip everything down, just grab the ballpoint pen and draw from observation. That's what always brought me back. And you can see that climb happen in these pages again and again. How I slowly work my way back to form. The final drawings are tighter, more confident, still imperfect, but better. It was a constant loop of getting lost, finding my way, and learning how to recover. And that's where some of the biggest lessons lived. This is just a few months, but you can already see how much ground I was covering and how much I was learning. Not just about drawing, but about seeing. And that brings us to the magician, which feels like the perfect archetype for this particular journal. After the Fool's Leap, the magician is where you start to figure things out. You start experimenting. You test things. Some work, some don't. Some surprise you, others fall flat. It's like being in the lab. You're combining tools, techniques, and instincts. Now, if my first journal was all about the Fool, the leap into the unknown, this one feels much closer to the magician. That's the archetype of skill, intention, and focus. After the Fool's blind jump, the magician is where you start learning how to actually work with the tools you have. The pen, the sketchbook, your eyes, these become instruments. But more importantly, you start realizing you are the magician. You set ritual, you do your work, and little by little it takes shape, and it does feel like magic. You tinker, you fail, you learn, and then you return to what you know works. For me, that's always been simple observational drawing with a ballpoint pen. No pencil, no eraser. No safety nets, no light penciling in, just straight to the paper. It's very easy to mess up, but that's the point. Accuracy isn't the goal here. It forces you to commit to the line, to stay present. The magician isn't about perfection, it's about engagement. You're engaged with the materials, with the moment, and whatever shows up on the page. And that's how the magician operates. The tool may be basic, but that process is anything but. And that's exactly what I'm about to do in today's drawing. For this drawing, I wanted to capture the same spirit. The moment when you stop waiting for the perfect conditions and just start working with whatever you've got. You're not waiting for permission or talent or inspiration to strike. That's what this journal taught me back then and what I keep coming back to even now, decades later. Now for today's drawing, I'm going back to my roots. I'm copying after the Spanish Renaissance painter Pedro Berruguete, the portrait of Ezekiel. I'm not here to make a perfect replica. What I'm doing here is using the original painting as a loose reference to guide my hand. It's about keeping the lines loose, letting them flow, and staying in the zone. That's the magician's state of mind right there, a balance of control and surrender. This takes me right back to those old art encyclopedias I grew up with over 30 years ago, flipping pages, discovering painters like Berruguete for the first time. Whatever it is that pulls you back to that state of mind, use it. And that's why I'm not adding any of my usual pop culture symbols here. No iPhone, no burger, no visual meme commentary. This isn't about clever twists or originality. This is about simple, honest hand practice. No gimmicks, just pen, paper, and focused attention. I'm just tapping into the state of flow where the hand moves freely and the lines just form the shape, one after the other. Look at the hat, for example. I left it unfinished, on purpose. Sometimes you have to let go of certain areas and leave space for the viewer's imagination to fill in the gaps. By emphasizing the sleeves, the facial expression, and the folds where I feel it matters most, I'm guiding the eye to where I want it to go. This isn't about highly detailed rendering either. Sure, I could have pulled out a Micron Sakura 005 for a more refined drawing. Then maybe I will in a future exercise. But today, I wanted to keep it simple, straightforward, and honestly, just fun. And this again ties directly to the magician. The ability to take something very basic as a pen and sketchbook page and transform it into a practice that connects us with centuries of tradition. No presumptions, no ambitious master plan, just study, attention, and humility. The magician works with what's at hand. So I recommend you try this out just as a simple exercise. It could be a ballpoint pen, it could be just a pencil, but very basic. Keep it very basic, straightforward. All right, that's where we are at today. As you can see, I'm finding a rhythm with these journal chores. Opening each one, sharing the lessons I've learned back then, and wrapping it up with a drawing that kind of distills what that particular phase was all about. And also tapping into the hidden archetypes, which I find quite fascinating, and there's so much to be learned from. Let me know in the comments, what's your journey been like? What part of the creative process you're struggling with? And as I always say, may the gods, angels, muses, or whatever you want to call these timeless archetypes be your guides and inspiration. Until next time, peace. Thank you very much for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to me and helps this channel grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.